Scene opens to a stormy night in the English countryside, near the top of a hill. A walled city with a spired cathedral visible in the distance a couple miles off. It's illuminated by its torches and lanterns. The view of the city is disrupted as riders come cresting the hill, a few dozen of them, heavily cloaked and galloping toward us, making a great muddy splash as they go. Following them, we see they enter a forest and quickly arrive at a scene of carnage. A carriage has been knocked off the side of a dirt road, its compartment partially crushed in and the wooden panels broken and splintered. Dead men lie strewn about everywhere in various states of mutilation, their pools of blood washing away in the mud in the storm. The riders surround the scene, and we see only the lower half of these horses as they move about until one of these riders comes to a stop and dismounts beside a lance bearing the triplicate Pegasus banner. The lower half of the lance is broken and half submerged in a muddy puddle. And we see the rider moving forward. We see only their lithe lower half as they stride through the pouring rain, the dark cape billowing behind them. "As I said, my lady, I received word only an hour ago. No one else has arrived since." This voice from up ahead. We see a familiar face. Colton Sardini, speaking to the rider, who stands over this corpse and kneels down, and we see it as a young woman with golden amber eyes and crisp white hair, a fair alabaster face and full lips. Her hood is raised. She looks over the body before calling to the knights around her. "The prince is dead. Secure the area from travelers and send word to the Count of Lincoln. Draft letters to the Covenant cities as well. They shall need to hear of this." She rises as the knights around her begin rearing up their horses and riding off out of view. She's visible holding the broken end of the lance, bearing the muddied and ripped triple Pegasus banner. The rain continues to pour down like a torrent. "The prince is dead. Long live the prince," she says with a dark smile, releasing the broken banner and letting it fall back into the mud. The scene fades as she passes over it, stepping over the broken lance, her cape moving in the storm. We change scenes to St. Mary's Undercroft. On the night that the news has spread, one of the 7 Covenant princes, Jean Marc de Martinique, Prince of Lincoln, has been destroyed. By chance, all 4 of you happen to be passing through the city around the time this news comes and have heard of the Elysium being called. Elysium is being held tonight at midnight in St. Mary's Undercroft beneath Westminster Palace. If I recall correctly, not Thomas, but Judith Chamberlain will be attending this. Is that correct?
Judith Stone, but yes.
Judith Stone, thank you. Where do we find everyone positioned in court, as it is quite busy tonight, and each of you kind of find your way there, mostly on your own, but for Elenid and Cormac, who come as a pair. We'll start with Cormac.
Once Cormac arrives, he's going to find someplace close to the front of the action where he can sit and wait. His face is very unreadable at the moment, although there's a definite undercurrent of a storm cloud there. He rebuffs any attempts for anyone to speak to him other than the other members of the Gauntlet.
And Elenid.
Elenid will attempt to get to the front as well. She has no reason to hide in the crowd this time.
Alright, the two of you make your way pretty close to the front. Where does Robert end up?
Robert will take his place next to the other Gauntlet members. A somber look about him.
And lastly, Judith Stone, as you enter alone and mostly unknown, but for some of the neonates here. And Bella Matea, of course.
Judith would make a point of making eye contact with Cormac so that he knows that she's there, but would mingle amongst the neonates that she knows and maybe a few that she doesn't know.
Indeed. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, Cormac's response to seeing her is just a tiny smirk that tells her, I know you're here.
It's pretty much all she was going for. That'll do.
The court is very full, filled with Canaanites of both acclaim and undistinguished alike, along with all of you. Ambrose stands at the front dais with Genevieve to his side. The Sheriff Cash is at the back tonight, watching the crowd. Ambrose is seen trying to hush the crowd with his hands, as it is in quite a stir as everyone fills this chamber up in a clamor tonight. Quiet yourselves, quiet. Yes, there is news which has been brought to my attention of the death of the Lincoln Prince. Reports are still coming in, but it is believed this information is from only nights ago. Court again bursts into an uproar of activity. Nervous energy fills the chamber on the news of the destruction of the Lincoln Prince. Mentally, where is the Gauntlet at with this revelation? We will start with Elenid this time. What do you make of this news? What does Elenid think?
Elenid is part relieved that this happened, but largely more questioning which side did this, because, of course, there are the two main people in the city that were very power-hungry, but it could have easily been the rebels as well. However, she's doing her best to try to mask this and keep her emotions relatively under control.
And Cormac.
Although Cormac expected that this would be coming sooner or later, the news that it's actually happened already does take him aback, and he gives Robert a very dark look.
What's going through Robert's mind?
Robert is filled with disbelief that this has happened so soon after he last spoke with his grandsire. His facial expression is grim and gloomy. And his mind certainly is wondering how this could have happened, if it did indeed happen, as it has been reported.
And Judith Stone.
Judith is also feeling a bit of relief, because having an elder prince gunning for your ass, or well, one of your alter egos, it's not super fun. But she's also keeping tabs on the reaction of the neonates immediately surrounding her.
Make a perception empathy difficulty 7. Alright, 2 successes. Overall, you're getting the feeling of anxiety and concern. These neonates are afraid. There's great strife in England, and with the death of someone so powerful, even if they were declared an enemy, at least by Ambrose's standards, is still jarring to them. And you continue to pick up on that sentiment of not feeling safe, of not feeling protected.
She'll do her best to provide what comfort she can and, soothe rattled nerves as best she's able.
Alright. As you tend to them, Ambrose's hands come up to settle the crowd again, and court quiets. Contrary to theory and last year's court, this was not by my hand, nor my order. Regrettable that he rescinded his own membership to the Covenant, lest he may have had more resources to protect himself. Let the event serve as a reminder that the Covenant will only protect those who serve it. The fate of Lincoln is unclear at this time, but rest assured that London shall remain safe. Should you have question or concern, presented to Chamberlain Silvers. And with that, he abruptly descends from the dais and pierces the crowd, which has returned to a loud clamor, exchange of theories and anxiety. Genevieve Silvers stands stunned, still at the dais, looking around in surprise. She seemed not to have been expecting that, as she is swarmed by Cainites who mob her, all of them speaking at once. She disappears in the crowd. Ambrose is making to exit the court as the crowd is temporarily distracted, and he passes by first Cormac and Eleanor, since they're close to the front, and speaking to the two of you without stopping. You, both of you with me, we must speak privately. He looks to you, Robert, as well, and gestures you forcefully from across the crowd.
Robert nods and begins following.
Cormac gets up immediately and falls in step.
Ned will get up and walk after them, hands folded in front of
And Judith, you see this as well. Of course, Ambrose isn't beckoning you.
Why would he?
What does Judith do in the aftermath?
Judith is going to be trying to do her best to address the concerns of those immediately around her with what knowledge she can admit to having without blowing her cover. hoping to stem the tide at her sire. Maybe, deflect a bit.
Oh, deflect over to your sire?
Well, deflect away from my sire.
Oh, away from
so
your
that,
sire.
So that Genevieve's not 100% swamped by every single face in the fight.
Gotcha. I can make a charisma empathy roll, difficulty 7.
Oh, if only I had a specialty.
You try and help pull some of the growing herd around Genevieve away, but the words of Ambrose are strong, and Genevieve is the Chamberlain. She seems to have more than she can handle, and it's difficult to get anybody to pay attention to you. She seems to notice you're trying, but there's not much impact.
Well, she did try, so she'll find her way over to Bella and kind of leave the crowd to its swirling. Let them come to her if they need to.
Bella has a small group of people about her as well, although most have gone over to ask Genevieve. She sees you as you approach. Judith. Oh, what do you make of this?
Curious. I wouldn't have expected anyone to take such an overt action. Though, opportunity does breed wolves.
I'm not terribly surprised by this turn of events. He made quite a few enemies, as I hear it.
As I understand it, the higher one rises, the more apt one is to do so.
This has all been so terribly macabre. I'm going to hold a gala. Shall you be joining?
Personal invitation from the Lady Bella Matea herself. I would be a fool to refuse.
She smirks. I trust you know where to go.
But of course, I'll be sure to dress more appropriately. She kind of spreads her skirts a bit to show she's not exactly dressed for a ball, more utilitarian.
Come tomorrow, before the witching hour.
But of course. Do you mean to invite anyone else, personally?
Oh, of course. Spread the word. She smiles.
I shall indeed.
And while smiling, she turns and begins to exit the court. She stops a few feet after, and then turns back to you. But only to the right people, my dear.
And she'll smirk a little bit. I know precisely what you mean.
She smiles again and then resumes her walking away. What does Judith mean to do now?
She'll mingle a bit with those not swamping Genevieve and generally bide her time until the rest of the gauntlet reemerges.
All right. So you return to mingling. As we follow the gauntlet. Ambrose leads the three of you out of St. Mary's Undercroft and upwards into the palace. It's a short distance before he brings you into a kind of salon. This side room, well appointed with fine furnitures, tables, chandeliers, even a few mirrors. There are some large window walls which look out into a small decorative garden. The room is dark, but for a few candles at the end of a table. But notably, a man is already in the room waiting, an Eastern-looking and dressed in multi-layered robes and garb, a white turban. You recognize Anaf Namtet from the Chamber of the Covenant, and he rises from his seat to bow to you all. And as the last of you enters, Ambrose closes the door behind you all. What a disaster. What all do you know about this?
The deed itself, nothing.
Looks to Elenid.
Unfortunately, that rings true, unless you're asking for suspects, in which case there is woefully little to go off of outside speculation.
We know very little. We know the Covenant must regain control of Lincoln and secure the fief quickly. That is the highest priority. Secondary to that, we may determine who or what claimed Jean Marc's own life.
Well, I'm certain he had rivals which may have been the ones to perform the act. But if not, they surely would be vying for the position.
What does Cormac do when he's brought into this room?
Cormac, for his part, is staying quiet, his arms crossed. Those storm clouds are becoming a raging storm by this point.
If our first and foremost objective is indeed to recapture Lincoln, I have heard word of someone else who has forces in that area.
What do you
I'm
speak
not
of?
certain. My apologies. I speak of I believe her name was Lady Everly. I heard of her through her childer, Sardine. Though I am not certain as to how many she has, but something is certainly better than nothing. I am also aware that she was interested in his, his title. But if this actually holds any weight, is something that I have no evidence towards or against. Idle words are merely idle words.
Everly is the name of the informant which has provided us this information. Eden Everly. She is who presently preserves the scene of the skirmish. I have never heard of this look before. Why do you believe that she has sought the title of Praxis?
Because her child, Colton Sardini, has tried to ask us for information so they could potentially ask back when we were in Lincoln, which none was given, of course.
That is flimsy at best, the words of an errant child.
Precisely why I do not put much weight behind it. I merely bring up her name because, according to her child, she does have some amount of forces there.
There is something else which has not been made public. The most recent report from Everly. She claims the banner of the Red Rose was seen riding into Lincoln just nights prior to this attack. We believe Prince Barbaros was at Lincoln around the time of Jean Marc's death. Given his proclamation, it seems strange he would be there at all.
And how reliable is this sighting?
According to Everly, it was confirmed by multiple. Almost certainly, Barbaros has quit the city by now.
Has there been no one to intercept him?
He looks to you. Would that we knew this would happen, we would have intercepted him. Everly claims her resources are spent preserving this attack, keeping the Kine at bay. It has been only 2 nights as I understand it, but I doubt even this Everly can hold the Kine at bay for much longer.
What I meant is, has anyone tried to intercept him now that we know he was there?
Even if I sent my fastest riders north, he would be returned to Chester by the time they arrived.
Are you planning on sending anyone to speak with him?
For now, the meeting of the Covenant holds on Candlemas in 1 month's time. You will be questioned.
Cormac nods, satisfied. Then, thinking of something else, he says, "Oh, my liege, one more question, if I might.
He nods.
Any news of any other K-Knight deaths in Lincoln? I'm asking particularly after my sire, Hugh de Barsham."
I have not been told any confirmation of other deaths, except for that of his retinue. Everly has not suggested anyone of our kind otherwise being destroyed.
Cormac nods, uncrossing his arms.
His retinue, did it include his champion?
Sir Reynaud,
Yes.
he is believed to be dead as well.
As expected.
I have requested Anafnamtet's presence on another matter, nights ago. Given that he was here, I asked him to join us on this matter for his input. And Anafnamtet bows, humbly. If asked my opinion, I would recommend caution in assuming any blame on anyone's part. Learning the nature of the attack on the late Jean Marc would be most informative. However, given the tumult of the country, it would be far too easy to assign the incorrect blame. And indeed, perhaps, that is what his assailant desired.
It wouldn't be impossible to steal a few banners, I'm sure.
He nods. Ambrose interjects. I know nothing of any other evidence of banners, livery. That is why, aside from securing the city, it is most critical that we get Covenant resources there, so that we have verifiable intelligence. I do not know this Everly, and I do not trust her.
I am no stranger to battlefields. I can see what I can find upon getting.
He nods. Regarding the city, Lincoln, I would also suggest caution. It is probable your kind local to the city expect violence from this covenant, based on the last exchange. Perhaps even anticipate attack. They have had several months now to soak in their own thoughts, and if history has taught me anything, it is that there is likely already a leader among them to replace Jean Marc.
I would be surprised if one would not step forth if we did arrive there.
The best one for diplomacy in that city, as we've seen from the last exchange, is Robert.
I can't speak of what my grandsire's relationship with them would be, but I think you are correct in that.
Ambrose nods a couple times, folding his massive arms together. And Afnamtet looks at the two of you. I consider myself a traveler of lifetimes and a scholar of worlds. I am most interested in what you might find there. Should you come across anything strange or unusual at the scene and require any assistance, I would be happy to oblige. This land is more ancient than I first believed, and there are many fascinating puzzles to solve and depths to explore even. Not to make this too academic.
Robert smiles and gives the man a knowingly nod.
I will let you see to the task then. Be quick about it. And he departs.
So we've moved from not being able to visit Lincoln at all to being sent there with all haste.
I would suggest you avoid bringing any great force. If you mean for diplomacy, a genuine show that you do not mean to assault the city would be advisable.
No, indeed. We wish to make sure the Covenant still holds it.
The hope is those that remain will be willing to work with the Covenant.
Though a backup plan or two wouldn't hurt.
Now there, I like that idea.
Let us gather up Thomas and make plans.
I wish you all a safe journey. And he bows deeply at the waist. I shall remain in London for a few more nights, and then you may again find me in the chamber in Salisbury.
Very well. The next we meet, then.
He smiles politely and begins to leave. The three of you return to Tom's Manor then, in search of him.
It's planned for Elenet, at least.
Cormac knows where he'll probably find him. He'll return to the Undercroft.
Alright.
So,
Go ahead.
Robert will just bring up waiting for him at his manor, then. In relation to Thomas.
That was my intention, yes.
It seems logical. I do not know how many nights we would have to wait until he arrives. I would assume he would have already been at this meeting if he was in town.
All the same, I'll make sure he didn't arrive late.
Worth a shot. Robert will go with Cormac.
Alright. Elenid, you see the two of them go off, seemingly in the direction of the Undercroft again. You go with them or to the manor?
She's going to the manor.
Okay. Meanwhile, at the Undercroft, many people are starting to filter out. Judith, you, over time, you mingle with some of the neonates and help reassure them. Genevieve eventually gets most of this group dismissed, assuring future answers in the coming nights and to not worry too much about it. It seems to not be the satisfactory answer they were looking for, but it is enough to get them to go away. And in time, you see Cormac and Robert return to the Undercroft.
Judith will dip her head in their direction, curtsy a bit, and make for the door. Unless someone holds her up, of course. She would have spent the time that they were out of meeting with Ambrose, making mention of Bella's gala to the right people, as she understands it.
All right.
Seeing that curtsy, Robert will at least mention to Cormac, do you know that one?
We are acquainted, he says. Why don't you check the other side of the room over there, see if anyone's seen him. I'll check over here. And he nods in the direction where Judith was heading.
Robert will shrug and scan the other side of the room.
All right. Sending Robert away, Cormac, you go over to Judith before she exits the chamber entirely.
To Robert's eyes, it'll look like he's just making pleasantries with an acquaintance of his, although his words are different. Things are not going well. We're going to need Thomas, and quickly.
Judith's demeanor is appropriate for someone showing deference to a superior in station. Eyes just slightly downcast and demurring a little bit. Thomas wouldn't have found out the nature of the neonates' concerns, nor their current attitudes towards both Ambrose and the Covenant as a whole.
There'll be time to discuss that later. For now, we have other plans we must make.
Are we to make for Lincoln, then?
How did you know?
The Gauntlet is dogs on a leash for the Covenant, are they not?
Using my own words against me, tut-tut.
I didn't mean them quite so harshly. We've heard them from many mouths besides your own.
He nods, placated. How soon can you meet us at the manor?
An hour? Possibly less. Depends on if I'm held up. I don't expect it. But you and I need to discuss these neonates at length, privately.
And that we will. But I cannot tarry long. Eleanor will be expecting me.
And Thomas.
Really, though, you're going to have to tell him eventually.
Now, given that the threat that he poses is currently ash and dust, the worry of the revelation is somewhat reduced.
I leave it to your discretion. For now, I'll play the part and make it look like I'm still looking for you.
I thank you for keeping this confidence. And she'll curtsy again, and then depart.
Cormac will smile as though a serious conversation didn't really happen, and he will indeed make a show of going around to some of the others. I know him.
All right. How long do you intend to play at this charade?
Until Robert looks like he's a bit about done asking on his side of the room.
So, of course, neither of you find anybody who's seen Tom in the last few nights or here at court. After maybe 20 or 30 minutes, you've definitely cleared the room of everyone here.
And he'll meet up again with Robert near the door. I've discovered nothing. How about you?
Nothing new. And of course, I did not see Thomas either.
He'll make his presence known soon enough. Or at least we must hope.
Yes, this is a very tumultuous time.
Let us return to the manor then. See if Edmund has found him already.
Agreed.
And that is where they will head.
All right.
Judith, with a bit of a lead and a better knowledge of London, is going for a servant's entrance into the Chamberlain Manor. Some side door she might not be seen going in.
Let's give me a standard dex stealth. Alright, you make your way inside. It's not the quietest you ever entered the manor, but knowing the side entrances is very helpful. And so you have time enough, maybe barely, to put your disguise back on. And about half an hour later, Cormac and Robert return. And the group of you convene in the sitting room, where you have in the past met to discuss similar issues of great gravity. Elenid and Thomas are already present when Cormac and Robert enter through the door and the staff behind them departs. The four of you have rejoined.
I trust you've heard the news, Thomas.
Ellen had filled me in as best she could. Sorry that I wasn't present. I have a new property I've been tending to and only just arrived back to London.
Would that trigger a check of any sort?
Absolutely. Manipulation subterfuge versus perception empathy. All right. Robert, you detect there is something about Tom's story which seems prepared, canned.
Specialties apply. Specialties might apply. Subterfuge would be selective omission, and manipulation would be persuasion.
In this instance, I'm going to say it is not omission, because although you were nights ago working on this, you were gone because you were Judith.
Persuasive?
You're not really trying to persuade him to do something one way or another, and I can't give you a catch-all persuasion to believe a lie.
Fair. Can't blame a girl for trying.
No, I can't.
Robert will narrow his eyes at this. I'll say nothing more. I see. You've been busy then.
Quite busy.
Right then, since you've been filled in, we were gathering to, solidify our plans of approach and solidify our backup plans. We are naturally advised against taking any large force with us, due to it initially being a diplomatic meeting.
That is the advice. Although, I get the feeling you at least want a backup plan.
In case things go badly, yes.
And the force camping outside of London, then.
Precisely. If word doesn't reach back by a certain time, those forces will naturally move.
I should be able to mobilize a small cadre.
Indeed.
I didn't spend all of winter simply twiddling my thumbs, Robert.
How many men have you gathered?
45. It's Not a massive retinue, but a small force is a small force.
I've worked with worse.
Very good.
Now the question becomes, who should go for the diplomatic meeting outside of Robert himself?
Any takers?
On one hand, I am skilled in the field of tactics, and as such, it would make sense for me to be with the forces. But on the other hand, I have been to a great many battlefields, and if I visit the site where the act transpired, I might be able to gain some details.
To my mind, you would be the logical choice. You could help facilitate diplomacy as well as investigate the site of the attack. Robert
On the
would.
other hand, Cormac has been rather silent, and the one time he did talk, it seemed like he was trying to figure out if certain individuals there were killed as well.
I am concerned about Hugh.
Would it not speak more volume if we were to both go, Cormac?
You do both have the most local ties. So far as diplomacy is concerned, you would have the easiest time making inroads.
However, she mentioned that she will not be able to hold the battlefield for very long and preserve it.
Why is it that we're not all going? Isn't that what Ambrose wanted?
The three of us, yes.
I would presume that he didn't ask me to go because I wasn't present, not
Precisely.
because I was to be excluded.
You were not there, and as such, you did not receive the order.
But he will. Ambrose is thorough, if nothing else.
If you did not intend to go, it is worth mentioning that my sire did speak with me before his annihilation. Your grandsire, sorry.
Recently?
Yes. I was in Lincoln shortly before his demise.
Well, this is the first I've heard of it. What exactly did he have to say?
Mostly lamenting the errors he's made. But it did lead a pathway into the investigation, perhaps. There is a merchant who goes by the name Patrick McNally.
It's a name we've heard.
Is it? In what context?
In the context of a vision.
Uh-huh.
It is whom they were discussing shortly before where they were meeting went up in flame.
Yes, well, this merchant, he's gone missing from his warehouse, which has burned down. I believe. And he has a brother. I may have tracked where his brother resides, which could lead us to this person of interest.
That would be something.
Yeah, so it would require a trip down to Canterbury, though.
Lynette does not look like she's the most happy with the idea of going to Canterbury.
Robert will turn his gaze towards Thomas.
Yes.
I don't hear you signing up for this.
The priority right now is Lincoln, ensuring its safety and security and participation as part of the Covenant.
Then it sounds like we're settled. We'll all head to Lincoln.
The overland travel will take some time to arrange. The men will need supplies sufficient to carry them through some weeks camping
Hold.
outside Lincoln.
Hold for a moment. Either one of us stays with our forces, or we arrange something with the prince where if we don't return by a certain time. Otherwise, our backup plans will be for naught.
Do we seek to keep troops at the ready here or in Lincoln? I consider myself confused.
I was of the opinion they were going to be here, as to not put people on edge.
They wouldn't be much help to us this far away from Lincoln.
It's a 10-day ride.
We should consider taking them at least part of the way, so they're near at hand, but not near enough to cause distress.
Besides, the roads are dangerous enough this time. I doubt too much strife would be raised over a force staying a good distance away.
That said, a 40-man force would raise some questions, should any of them find out.
But it's not an army. It can be explained.
Not an army, but a small militia.
Small enough to be explained as for personal security. If a prince can be waylaid in his own fief, surely we can justify bringing a few men.
Fair enough.
I do lament the fact that I might not be in London when my ghoul arrives.
I lament the fact we cannot finish what we set out to do before all this happened.
Things are happening quickly now. We must be willing to adapt. What's the matter? Cat got your tongues.
No, we should move with most haste. And for an extra security, perhaps I'll at least get a resource in Canterbury to at least start searching for this suspect.
Good. How long before you can have the men ready? He looks to Tom.
What would I estimate? Time frame.
To get your men ready to move to Lincoln and camp out for
An unknown period of time.
to make the trip, well, to get ready and just make the trip, you think no more than a couple days at the most. And then at that point, it will take around 10, maybe 12 days, depending on weather. And if you want the resources to keep them waiting there for a week, it'll probably take you a couple extra days to get the resources in London. So 2 to 4 days, depending on how long you want to prepare for.
We should be able to make Lincoln in a fortnight, though it will take a few nights to make arrangement for supplies and the necessities they'll need for camping out in the winter.
Should I send notice to my ghoul that I am leaving London? Can I tell him he has a place to stay here?
Of course.
At least he'll be comfortable. Sorry.
Give Kasim his name. He'll make sure that he's well looked after. Might only be servants' quarters we have available at the time, but he'll have a warm bed and 3 square meals a day.
I don't deserve such kindness, thank you.
You put up with me, it's the least I can do in recompense. And he'll grin a bit.
I'll make sure the letter gets sent. Is there any other way I can help you?
I did have a thought on that matter, but it can wait.
Perchance, do we have any maps of the surrounding area or areas close to Lincoln so we can find a suitable place for our group to camp without getting too much suspicion?
In my head, it feels like that's something Thomas would have on hand. Lincoln's a major city. Lincolnshire has at least one major shipping.
You would have at least working knowledge and maybe a basic map for trade purposes, so routes leading to Boston and routes from Boston to Lincoln proper. You would know less about the geography surrounding the city of Lincoln.
Right, but we've ridden that course between Boston and Lincoln before, so we'd have first-hand knowledge of that. And the route we would have taken from Boston to Lincoln would be joining up with the same route from London to Lincoln.
Yes. Did that answer your question?
Yep, that'll work. So Thomas will go to one of his desks in the room and produce a trade route map. Will this do for a start?
It doesn't give much details to the geography.
We've seen it with our own eyes. I can't imagine it's changed very much since last we were in Lincoln.
Fair enough. Can I make some sort of roll to choose a location for them to, well, for their forces to camp out without getting too much suspicion from the locals in Lincoln?
And the goal is to have a place for them to quickly reach Lincoln, but also be fortifiable. Is that what I'm getting?
And not arousing suspicion.
Sure. I'll have you do an intelligence academics, difficulty 7. Alright, 2 successes. I'll add your specialty for tactics since that's pretty applicable here. Based on what you know of the area around Lincoln in this time, there is a hill to the southeast, which is kind of large and expansive. It looks down on Lincoln somewhat, and you think it would be fairly defendable, but also would not be a terrible ride down, and there aren't really any big communities that would pay attention to this nearby it.
Alright, she'll point out the location. This should serve us well. However, we should send one of the scouts ahead when the time comes for it.
I bow to your superior knowledge of planning. I'll have Brandon make arrangements for axes for wooden spikes, shovels to raise ramparts.
Alright, so are the group of you done planning, or is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Thomas is going to, when that conversation's done, he's going to rise and cross, tap Cormac on the shoulder, and head up to the private quarters upstairs.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. I heard you're going upstairs, and what was before that?
So he's going to rise, tap Cormac on the shoulder, and make for the quarters upstairs.
Okay. So Tom disappears and leaves the group of you. It's somewhat late in the evening, although there's still some time. Is there anyone not turning in for the day?
Tom's not turning in for the day.
Besides Tom.
Tom is not doing that.
Yeah, because he wants to speak to Cormac, so Cormac will follow Tom.
Okay. What do Elenid and Robert do?
Elened would inform Gertrude that they are going to be leaving after everything is readied, and give the estimation of how long that could take.
Assuming Guy is close by, because he was following Robert,
Mm-hmm.
he would send him over to Canterbury to start investigating into the Brooks McNelly.
Okay. Do you tell him anything about what he's looking for or why he's going, or just kind of look into this name?
He's going to tell him that the man has a reputation for being a ruffian, so be careful who he shares his information with, and try his best to not get caught in any sort of ambush.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll fully inform him on that.
Great. He's excited to go on this adventure and look into this for you, and we'll probably leave first thing in the morning.
All right. Other than that, Robert is going to turn in for the night.
Okay. Then we follow Cormac as he follows Thomas upstairs to a room away from everyone else. And you catch Thomas entering this room, Cormac, so you follow after, and the two of you end up in this room alone.
Close the door.
He does so, looking expectantly.
The neonates lie on a knife's edge. The right voice, the right moment, could possibly turn them I don't know where.
And you're telling me this why?
I've not led a revolution before.
I have tried to, if that's what you're getting at. The Peasants' Rebellion. It did not go well for me. Then they were on a knife's edge as well. I tried to direct them. Ambrose nearly smoked me.
Bella Matea is having a gala tomorrow. I expect many will be there. Judith is expected.
How terribly gauche. You're not really going to go, are you?
I was hoping that a Gauntlet Lord might accompany her.
Please don't tell me you're saying what I think you're saying.
You're more familiar with the mindset and the situation. I'm grasping at how to turn them, where to turn them.
With the political upheaval as it is already, do you think it's wise to rile the masses?
No. But I need a better read on the situation. A different set of eyes.
To stir a rebellion or to quell one?
That would be the question we seek to answer. We'll surely cause a sensation. Bella quite enjoys Judith's company.
She most certainly does not enjoy mine.
I'll bear the weight of that. She'll get over it.
So you're asking me to go with you as your companion, he raises an eyebrow, and have a chat with any neonates who happen to be there?
Precisely. You have a name that they'll recognize. You've done right by them in the past.
It was a
You
long
don't
time
have-
ago. Most of them weren't even made by then.
Reputations don't die so easily.
I wonder whatever happened to those rebellious youths I whipped up in those days. I don't see many of them around London anymore.
There was another question that I wanted to ask as it relates to the neonates. If they could be swayed to support an individual, we would need to choose which one to whom to sway them. Their support for Ambrose is waning, but we could reinforce it and rekindle their, well, acceptance at best. And he kind of looks a little bit nonplussed by the notion.
Is now even the time to focus our attention on this?
This will happen whether we choose to focus on it or not. We can choose to have sway over how it turns out.
Cormac begins to pace, his hands clenched behind his back.
We could throw support behind Ragna. We know that she's made overtures towards expanding her territory to all of England.
Have we had any news what the rebels are up to?
That would be option 3. I had thought to send riders to seek them out, possibly with a message. But I don't know how well they'll be received, whether or not we'll hear a response, or whether or not they'll be tracked back to us.
If these riders are mortal, I doubt they'll fare well at all. Still, I would like to know what they're doing, where they found themselves. I'm still interested in what they have to say.
I worry that they were responsible for Jean Marc.
Wouldn't that be a good thing?
Depending on your perspective, it certainly is an escalation.
Cormac looks around to make sure they're not being eavesdropped upon. Even though they're in a private room, he has said something rather inflammatory.
You can make a perception alertness roll, standard difficulty. You don't think so. 2 successes. You don't think there's anyone that you can hear outside the door or anything. It's a closed room.
I feel for Robert, I do. Jean Marc was one of his lineage. But he was also a preening prat.
He was paranoid and given towards overreaction.
That as well.
Still, I would not have had this go that way.
I admit I'd be much more comfortable right now if things were as they were before, with all the princes of the Covenant in place, and us not under constant suspicion. But we are, as I assumed we would be, which is why the rebels seem every day more and more seductive. I can't help but think this is some kind of wide-scale conspiracy.
The nascent Camarilla from the continent does seek to expand. They even have their own agents here in England.
Are they bold enough to make such a move as killing a prince?
No, but I think Eden Everly would be.
Ah, yes, Everly. She even told us she had designs on the throne.
Well, her child certainly did make overtures.
Please, it was so obvious I could touch it.
I didn't say they were subtle overtures.
We are drifting from the subject of this conversation, however. Yes, I will go to Pelmatea's ball with you. Merely to feel the pulse, so to speak.
Do dress the part.
I don't have any clothing that isn't road-worn. Perhaps you can provide me with something.
Tom will gesture at his wardrobe. Have your pick. I don't imagine we're very much different in size.
But goodness, I do hope you have something that's not all in drab brown. You do dress rather boring as Thomas, you know.
It's utilitarian. It's good quality, but no, it's not very flashy. But I'm sure you can find something to put together that will bring out the blue of your eye.
I'll see what I can cobble together. Certainly not going to try to hide Bellingtail's ball from Robert. He is rather a social butterfly.
Hide it, no, but I don't think he'd be welcome.
Why? Just because of his relation to Jean Marc?
Actually, that might endear him somewhat. The business with Amelia, I think, still rides raw against the neonate.
That will rile them up even more. I might be able to get more out of them that way.
Or considerably less.
You're not giving me enough credit. I do have a way with words.
One Gauntlet Lord coming to a social affair will be quite sensational. Two, one of whom is seen as directly responsible for the death of one of their number. That might cause a bit more sensation than I think either of us wants to deal with.
Was she really one of their number, though? She was an outsider. None of them knew her. They only know she was a neonate and that she was killed. That makes them afraid of Robert. And I don't think they hate him.
No, but they are afraid of him. We did some good when Jean Marc fled the city. They are more favorably disposed towards the Gauntlet now than they were, but I don't know that that's goodwill we can trade upon just yet.
If he does find out about it on his own, we won't be able to keep him away.
As I said, we should definitely tell him, but let the man make up his own mind about whether or not to go. We should definitely clearly state the cautions.
Very well then, we shall do so on the morrow. I can feel the day sleep upon me.
The gala will be held at midnight.
What a perfect time. Just like in the fairy tales.
Bella is given towards showmanship, at the very least.
Cormac lets out a false gasp that would do your training and performance. You don't say.
He'll chuckle a bit. Do you remember the inn where we hunted?
I remember it.
Meet me there, or rather, meet Judith there. I'll make sure that I'm dressed appropriately for the occasion.
Consider it done. Now let me find something to wear myself before I depart.
Tom stands aside. Will unbuckle his sword in preparation for the...
Cormac will quickly find something that looks rather courtly before bidding Thomas a good evening and going back to his own chambers.
Alright. Remainder of you fall to day sleep, and the night ends. And as that scene ends, we will take our 15-minute break and come back around the hour.
Swell.
Okay.
Damn, that first 2 hours went fast.
I'll say it did.
How are we all doing?
Don't pay the ransom.
Yep.
Don't pay the ransom.
What, there's a ransom?
Yes, I have returned. Don't pay whoever it is that's kidnapped me.
Well, a question I had from Shadow. Do you mind if I ask this out loud, just so I can clarify everyone?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the question was, what was Alexander Hitchcock's status in London? He is known to be an elder Bruja of fairly high status. He is known by most to have a small circle of other Bruja, which he meets with from other cities. He's a friend of Simone de Champ. I think that's most of what you would know.
Oh, wow. She's actually his friend, huh?
Yes.
That explains so much more.
Got the sniffles now. It's very obnoxious. Are we ready to get back in? We've got everybody?
Yep.
Sarah here?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I jumped the shark.
A little bit.
Got so excited about this party.
It's gonna be lit, y'all.
Okay. So the day comes and goes, and evening comes again, and you all wake up. You can take a dot of blood off. And so it is the night of Belmatea's gala, to which Judith was invited and instructed to bring the right people. And so she has invited Cormac. First, I will check in with a couple of the others. What are Elenid's plans for tonight? Obviously, there are probably a couple nights before everyone leaves for Lincoln, so you have a few nights. Is there anything Elenid's doing tonight in particular?
She intends to assess the forces they have, get a general grasp on what their level of training is. Perhaps put them through a few drills.
Okay. I'll have you do a perception academics roll, standard difficulty. Once you're brought out to the soldiers in Tom's retinue.
Does my specialty apply?
Yes, I will say so.
What's difficulty again?
Standard. Alright, so that's 5 successes. So, by your count, 20 men-at-arms, riders, and 25 footmen. The training is a bit varied. It ranges from green recruits to some seasoned soldiers. Everyone here is hardy and strong, that you can tell. There are no old men that shouldn't be in the fight. There aren't any children. So they're all fighting age men of fairly good health for the time. It seems like the equipment is also somewhat mixed. It's what you would expect of a maybe not a mercenary band, but something comparable or slightly below your average mercenary band. The 20 men-at-arms are the best equipped, and the 25 footmen are mostly spears, swords, and axes, with a handful of archers in them. And I would say with your 5 successes, you're able to, once you're identified as a companion, and some people have actually seen you and recognize you already as being this kind of companion in status, along with Tom, they take some of what you have to say and include it in their training regimen. Of course, it's difficult to impose all of your knowledge on them, as you are a woman, and they do not want to take this information from a woman. And so, although your ideas are very useful to them and your drills would be very useful, it's kind of half-heartedly taken, some of them more than others.
Can I make a leadership roll to try to convince them?
Sure. Charisma expression. Difficulty 8. Do you have any specialties there?
None that would apply.
Okay. Yeah, you don't find a lot of purchase, although some of the men do find your ideas are useful, and the drills, exercises you would put them through are certainly reasonable. Your status as a woman, especially one dressed so plainly, doesn't do you any favors, and it's difficult to get them to listen to you very much. But at least you know what you're dealing with now.
Yes, their discipline will be dealt with in the future.
Meanwhile, Robert, you have a couple nights. What will you be doing this night?
Is he approached about this party at all?
Tom would make sure that Robert is aware, but also caution him against going, just simply because how it might affect the neonates there, for better or worse. In the end, he'd expressly say, "It's definitely up to you." But Tom obviously has some reservation.
Noted. Robert will start with a visit to an afternoon tip and ask him if he's suspects that we'll find something in particular that would stand out.
At the site of the attack?
Mm-hmm.
He tells you that he doesn't know what to expect, but he does know that by reputation, Sir Reynald was known to be something of a champion, and Jean Marc is no fledgling, and his retinue is known to be quite fearsome. So whoever did this, had to either be large in size, as in many numbers, or certainly supernatural, and that seems more likely, he thinks. And on that topic, he kind of talks about any number of things you might find depending on what kind of creature of the unknown some unnatural entity might leave. In the end, he tells you if anything does seem inexplicable, he'd be willing to advise you on it, but does not expect to go himself.
All right. And he gave a little bit of instruction of what to actually look for. Okay.
It was very broad strokes kind of things.
Oh, hey, it's something for someone who has no occult, I suppose.
That's true.
What clan was, gosh, I'm trying to find...
Alexander?
Barbaros.
Oh. He was Ventru, if I'm not mistaken.
Venture, okay.
Let me make sure, because I often get him mixed up with someone else. He's Ventru, yes.
Yeah, for a moment I thought it was Bruja, so I guess that plan of going to Alexander doesn't have a real meaning behind it anymore. Robert will hang out at Elysium.
Okay. You will be idling in Elysium. And what does Ellen need to do with the rest of her evening?
Well, for starters, she intends to go feed. Outside of that, since the troops don't seem keen on listening to her, she will merely... Well, part of the night she will be using her little game to try to stage plans should things go wrong. The other part of the night she will, well, take a bit of a stroll between her feeding location and where she's going to return to do so. Where she's going to return to make the plans, the manor.
Okay. And while the two of you spend your time elsewhere in London, we'll turn our attention to the inn, Judith's Inn, where she is meeting Cormac in preparation for this gala of Palmateas. It's fairly busy this evening. It's not extremely late. These taverns and these inns often keep a good number of people in them, even in the later hours in London. It's just much more dense than other cities. And so, I'll say, Cormac, you're second to arrive when you see that Judith is at a table at this inn.
Judith would be, of course, doing her best to feed and make sure she's nice and rosy pink when she shows up to Bella's little guy.
Cormac drifts nonchalantly over to Judith's table.
Judith is, I should note, dressed a good deal more conspicuously than she has in the past. Gilded silk brocade in a deep crimson with gold filigree, off the shoulder, showing quite a bit of bosom, and cleavage, definitely getting more attention from the tradesmen than she might normally otherwise. It's tasteful, but deliberately on display.
Cormac looks her up and down. You look different.
Now. Don't act as if you haven't seen a lady dressed for a ball before.
Not many, to be honest. I wasn't in the habit of attending balls. This would in fact be my second, I think.
I don't often, but I won't say I'm a stranger to the...
I hope I don't make a fool of myself.
I'm not unaccustomed to leading this particular dance. I hope you don't mind.
Not only do I not mind, I request it.
I might not be quite as good as Robert, but I get by.
Speaking of which, did you tell him about this little get-together?
I did. But I also voiced my concerns. The ball is in his court, so to speak.
This ought to be an interesting evening. Come along, then. We mustn't keep them waiting.
She'll make a show of offering a hand up so that he can assist her in rising.
He'll look at the hand and give her a look that says, really? But he will take her hand and help her rise.
It's all on how you play the part. And she'll crook her arm and tuck it into his elbow.
And just as the two of you are making your way out, down the stairs of your inn comes a man you recognize, Cormac, a young man. And he seems to be looking about when he catches your eye and then does a double take, and you see it is Gautier, your young scholar. He
Gautier.
smiles. Oh, Cormac. He comes down the stairs quickly. Just good to see you.
It's a wonder to see you. Has it already been so long?
Yes, I've been here for a few nights. I am a master now, Cormac. They let me do it. He smiles.
Of course they did. And he'll smile too, but there's something wolf-like about it.
Apologies, miss. I did not mean to interrupt on your event or evening out.
Not at all. She'll smile demurely.
Ah, yes, how boorish of me. Gautier, meet Miss Judith Stone.
And she'll extend the hand.
And he bows and takes the hand to kiss it. Gautier d'accord. Master Gautier d'accord, he says with a smile rising.
Pleasure.
You look different, Gautier. Something about being a master has put a certain light about you. Confidence, maybe.
Well, if I do say so, it was quite lightning to put that old bastard in his place at my thesis. He smiles, nodding to himself. He became so red in the face, asking me questions, and I answered all of them.
As I knew you would. You're a bright boy. Which sounds weird coming from Cormac, since he doesn't look very old.
Shall you, be returning here? Are you staying at the inn now, too?
No, my dear boy. We're staying at the manor of an old friend. I was going to send notice to Cambridge for you to meet us there. We'll have room and board for you.
Well, that's wonderful. Where is it?
And he'll give him directions to the place. Looking to Judith for cues on whether she wants to make it known that it's her place or Thomas's.
Judith is being quite quiet on that front.
Excellent. Well, I'll grab my things and make my way over there.
I'll meet you a bit later in the evening and we can renew our agreement.
He nods, smiling, beaming.
It's been quite some time, I'm sure you're anxious.
Anxious for the road ahead.
Good. Until later, then.
He nods excitedly and then starts going back up the stairs.
Cormac turns his wolfish grin on Judith. I like that boy.
What was he studying?
What was he studying? I don't think we ever went over that.
Law was his main focus, especially clergy law.
Law, just like myself. Although I never made it to master. Close. But then, things happened, you understand.
You could make a very excellent solicitor later. Or barrister.
It would be nice to have one of those in our pocket.
If he's as brilliant as you feel he is, I don't see why that can't be in the future.
Brilliant, impulsive, frustrating. It's why I picked him.
Because he mirrors you?
You're too kind. I'm not brilliant, unfortunately. But those other things I have in spades.
You're too hard on yourself sometimes, Cormac. But then again, pride is a...
And I suppose I'll meet you in hell.
She grins wanly. There are so many more interesting reasons, simply than pride.
I should think I've had a little taste of them all.
She'll give him a little flirty wink. Now. Best behavior.
What fun is that?
If it's fun you're looking for, that can wait.
We should get going before he comes downstairs again and wonders why we're still standing here like idiots.
Quite right. And she'll gently lead him towards the door.
All right. The two of you make your way out into the night to Belamatea's gala. You arrive at Belamatea's estate and see that it is quite filled with many people you've seen in court. In court and in Elysium, mostly of the younger variety. Although here and there you see faces you recognize that are less young. You see Simone Deschamps, who's trying to tiptoe around the elegant salon. You see, of course, that Helen is present, as she would not miss this. And you even see the gesture Tom Lafoy, who seems to be enjoying himself quite a bit. And at the center is, of course, Belamatea, attended by a number of people. And you would recognize many people here are apparently not Cainites at all. You recognize a number of people who seem to be living, you think. For here and there you see in the dark corners some of the neonates are feeding, maybe not as discreetly as they could be in this manner, but the kind seem not to be worried at all. Their eyes are glazed over, and there is an air about this place which suggests that there are very few sober people in this room. Cainite are kind of like. And so you step into this den of hedonism and pleasure. The two newest arrivals.
Cormac takes one look around this room, turns to Judith and says, "I've changed my mind. I don't want to be here."
Come now. Little debauchery never hurt anyone.
It's not the debauchery that worries me. It's who's doing it.
Judith makes a bit of a show looking around to see who it is he might be referring to.
He's looking at many different people who he sees in the... Some Cainites he doesn't like, some he's still wary of. And then all the mortals, of course.
I'll have you both make an appearance etiquette roll. Standard difficulty. I'll have you both describe yourself in appearance and how you try to comport yourself. We'll start with Thomas. You got a good description of your gown earlier. Are you staying by Cormac, or how do you kind of act as you begin to enter this area?
Judith is going to be as good as her word and kind of lead Cormac through the paces as they arrive, helping him to comport himself a little bit more appropriate for the moment, hopefully offsetting some of that.
Yeah, and this kind of applies to how you generally behave with
She's going to be, she's going to be relatively familiar in her manner towards most people. A lot of physical contact, a little touch on the shoulder, cupping a hand, what have you. All very non-threatening and
Cormac, you find it is a little bit difficult for you to blend into this crowd of hedonism, and it shows in your behavior and confidence in the population that you previously tried to rouse to your side. Of course, it's a new generation, but perhaps it's your thoughts of your previous experience that distract you, and it's difficult for you to carry yourself tonight.
That makes sense. He doesn't quite know where to begin. Doesn't feel comfortable at all, and it shows.
Bella Matea catches the glance of both of you together from across the room as these kind lie here and there, enveloped in each other and the neonates, some of them caressing and necking, others feeding with very little discretion. And across the crowd, Bella beckons the two of you forward.
Oh, great, into the serpent's mouth.
deep breath. I don't
You do
expect
all
her
the
to
talking.
I don't expect her to bite anyone's head off this evening.
I hope she can't read lips. And he puts on his fakest smile. Shot through with obvious discomfort.
The two of you
Jude.
go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, go ahead, because you're already there.
The two of you approach, and a few neonates make way as you're obviously being beckoned over. Bella Matea leans back in one of these day beds in a very lascivious nightgown. It's dark gray, this black trim ending at the thigh. It's certainly not much worse than she usually wears in Elysium, but she's obviously very confident in this environment and showing this much flesh. I'm very pleased you could come, Judith. I'm surprised by your company, however.
Well, I am led to believe that at one point he and I shared similar ideals as far as certain political leanings. And it would seem inappropriate not to invite at least one member of the Covenant.
You did have a nice start to your history in London with that Peasants' Rebellion business. I thought that was quite applaudable. But it didn't seem like you took much to my fancy the last time we spoke, Cormac.
I could say the feeling is mutual.
If nothing else, perhaps we might both share in our lamentation of Amelia's fate. I think for different reasons perhaps we cared for her, though I cannot speak to your concern.
What happened to her was unfortunate. And I regret my part in it.
Come, sit. And she moves some of the neonates around her, kind of turn them away to scoot so there's space on this daybed couch.
Judith is going to insinuate herself between Cormac and Bella just to kind of ease the tension a little bit. If I had known this was meant to be a nightwear gala, I'd have come more appropriately attired.
I trend on the more casual, as you can see.
Would that I had your same boldness.
It's been so many years I cannot say if it is boldness or apathy.
I certainly feel overdressed.
She smiles. I shall take it as a sign of respect. I doubt I shall hear anything about where the Gauntlet leans on this business with Jean Marc or what is to happen. She says it's looking to Cormac.
Yet more unfortunate business. I wish it would have gone differently.
Your actions were noted last year, keeping the young at bay. That was applaudable, though it might give them some reassurance to know what next the Gauntlet hopes to achieve in this growing fire that is our country.
Our foremost goal is to see the Gauntlet and the Covenant strong. To quell these fires would be our greatest achievement.
And what if it has spread to the very core of the Covenant? Would you rip its heart out to save the country?
It would be like Hercules strangling his own children. I might lament it, but all the same, it must be done.
She smiles faintly.
Then, realizing he's talking to me, he snaps his jaw shut and looks over to Judith.
It was a grand experiment, was it not?
The Covenant was ambitious, and may yet still achieve some greatness, though I am skeptical of its results.
Still, unifying 7 princes under a single banner, even if transient, it is an impressive feat.
I suspect the two of you might enjoy a conversation with my dear friend Tom Lefoy. You may even agree on a few things.
Judith arches her brow a bit.
Bella smirks.
I wonder on which things those might be.
I had not expected to hear a Gauntlet Lord say they would be willing to do such extreme things to protect this country, even at the cost of the Covenant itself, perhaps.
In the time that I have known Cormac, he does seem to be a champion for the underdog.
She looks to you, and the three of you are squished fairly close together on this daybed, really meant for one person to recline on. And so she turns and crosses her legs, looking to you, Cormac. There are contacts, groups of people whom I've heard Tom Lefoy speaks to from time to time. They might have similar viewpoints as your own on England. You care for the young, as do they.
It is most gracious of you to say so. Perhaps I will have a conversation with Monsieur Lefoy after all.
Of course, whatever conversation you have is none of my concern. I am just a hostess. She smiles wryly.
Merely facilitating an interaction between like-minded individuals.
How am I even to keep track of who all attends these parties anyway? You really can meet anyone at these things.
That's quite what I was hoping to do.
Then I hope the people you meet are of like mind after all. And she smiles and brings a hand up to your chin, lovingly, before letting go. I think there are some other guests which I should attend to.
Judith will offer her a hand to, if she looks like she's going to get up off the bed, she'll offer a hand to help her rise.
She takes it as she rises, and looks back to Cormac again, smiling that wry smile. A knowledge of something, as she departs into the crowd again.
I said too much, damn it. I just can't watch my tongue.
But you said to the right person.
Did I?
There's a reason. There is a reason I wanted you to join me. I think you give Bella far too little credit. Something occurred to me. She offers these boons, minor boons, in exchange for use of her herd, to the young. What happens when you kill one of our kind who happens to owe a boon?
I actually do not know the answer to that, but I'm sure you do.
The debt transfers to the transgressor, and then they owe the debt previously owed by the deceased.
That is barbaric.
She's been using prestation as a way to ensure the survival of the young.
Ah, now I see it. You truly think she might be a kindred spirit?
In her way,
Or you mustn't forget she's a bloody fucking harpy.
her station at court does provide her certain advantageous positions. For who would like to owe a debt to the chief harpy of London?
You do play this game much better than I do.
One need only follow the spider's web to find out just what it needs to catch. Shall I accompany you in seeking out this Lefoy?
He shouldn't be hard to find. He dresses more garishly than... Well, then I don't know whom. I was going to say it, but I held my tongue. Did you see that?
See, you can do it.
The two of you do see through the crowd that Tom Lefoy is easily visible. He seems to be engaged with a couple very pale individuals, also dressed fairly liberally. Young man and a young woman, apparently both very pale, and they all seem to be getting along famously.
Shall I join you?
I'm not letting you leave me.
You say such kind things. The girl might get to wondering.
You're my protection from all of this.
She chuckles. It was a jest, Cormac.
I must admit, I don't find any comfort among such desperate hedonism.
Bella is known for putting on such galas. As she said, it's equal parts boldness and apathy. She doesn't much care what people think anymore.
What an interesting position to find oneself in. To be so carefree.
Bordering on Inui. I think she's lonely.
Lonely? How can she be? She's always surrounded by this.
Water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink.
Are you saying she needs a husband?
I'm saying she needs a challenge.
How do you challenge a woman who's so hard to surprise?
Therein lies the riddle.
Any road. We don't have time for this right now.
Very well. And she'll rise and straighten her skirt and offer a hand to him.
Have you ever spoken to this Lefoy before?
I have not. But a certain
I
gentleman.
have. I'll let you continue.
A certain gentleman we're both acquainted with has.
Let's just say he's cut from a different kind of cloth. He doesn't think like normal people do. Maybe that's why he's so popular.
Certainly not a bad thing.
I myself tend to find him unfocused, but that might just be me.
Or an act.
Perhaps you can tell the difference.
We shall see. And she'll help him to his feet, lead the way.
And he will allow himself to be led, giving polite nods to any he passes who take any interest in him.
You get some glazed over looks of interest and curiosity. And as you approach, you see the young man and the young woman accompanying Tom Lefoy look to you. The young man kind of, his eyebrows raise briefly. Oh, look at you, you're stiff as a board, mate. Try and relax. Like her, she's having a good time, it looks. He looks over to Judith.
Judith does indeed look quite at home and relaxed at the moment.
You're so rude. Ignore him. I apologize, my lord. Come, let's get you away. You've had far too much to drink. The young woman kind of pushes the young man away and guides him away.
Cormac will keep his eyes planted on him, staring daggers into him. No look of anger on his face, just quiet danger.
He's kind of laughing to himself. He's very clearly intoxicated. They probably both are. Tom Lefoy remains sitting there, still in his little jester's outfit. This red and yellow kind of piece together looks ridiculous. And this big smile on his face. He puts his hands together. It does seem you could have used a drink. What brings you to this corner?
A very particular bird made mention that the two of you might have things in common to discuss.
Birds of a feather? Which kind of bird?
The blonde kind.
He smiles a giant grin, his gums extended. Seems unlikely, but I'm interested. I recognize you. You're quite a stir among the young. Are you here for trouble or here for fun? He leans in towards you, Judith.
I find that the two often go hand in hand, though one can often be mistaken for the other.
Let us return to birds. What kind of bird are you? He looks back to Cormac.
You just cut out for me epically. Did that happen to anybody else?
Nope.
Oh boy, can you repeat what you said, Bupar? I'm sorry.
He looks to you and asks you what kind of bird you are.
Right now, I feel like a dodo.
He smiles, seemingly very amused by this. Dodo bird, very good, very good. What does a dodo bird do? Looks suddenly very concerned.
Mostly just walks into walls, I should think. Has the same dumb-eyed glare you see on my face, and I point at his face.
That's not my bird type at all. I wonder why she thought I was a dodo. He looks off.
I believe she expected you might know some people who would be very interested in hearing what Lord Cormac has to say.
He looks to you and then looks to him. Tom Lefoy knows many people. Many sheep, many birds. Speak your mind, Gauntlet Lord. What kind of people can Tom Lefoy find for you?
The kind who do not have a voice of their own in a place like this. Those you see there at the fringes, and he'll nod thither and
Those who seek to look out for the very young amongst us.
Tom Lefoy might know these people. But what make you of our dear late prince? I wonder, did he deserve a castle? Did he deserve a grave? Is his death a shame or a sham?
a little of both, I should think. But he has certainly thrown things into turmoil, going and becoming worm food like he did.
I wonder why you care about such things. Yes, your payment, your service, your Gauntlet Lord status. These things are important, I'm sure, at some level. But why? How does that impact the dodo bird Cormac?
You cut right to the heart of the matter. And he'll look to Judith.
I would expect, because the turmoil often targets the youngest among us first. They'll feel it far before the elders.
When there is a strong prince, there is security, safety. When things are thrown into upheaval, it is often the young who feel the worst sting, as Judith says. I don't know why it is I feel such a kinship with them. Perhaps something from my breathing days. But it's stuck with me all this time.
I'll have you both roll a charisma. I will let you choose either charisma empathy or charisma expression. Tom, difficulty 6, Cormac, difficulty 7. Alright, one success. Cormac, do you have any specialties here?
I do. Air of confidence in correct. I don't really think that applies in this case.
I'm gonna say no, but still, one success for you, two for Tom, so 3 together. He looks between the two of you quickly. You'd think perhaps he's very nervous, although you don't get that feeling from him at all. Let me ask you this, Dodo Bird Cormac. Now that Lincoln lacks a prince, what should replace it, I wonder? Another prince? Another covenant prince? Would you name yourself prince?
The princely life is not for me. But in fact, you do raise an excellent question. Do we let the space become filled with another, with equal ambitions and equal flaws? Or do we strive for something new? A different covenant, so to speak. One who keeps the interests of all its people at heart.
And what if they couldn't take it back? Dodo Bird Cormac, what then? He whispers as he leans in. Would you burn it?
I might just. And then he bites his lip. His fangs descended without him even realizing that he did, and a small line of blood rolling down his chin.
I expect he means if the young couldn't take it back.
Is that what you meant, clown?
A smile slowly grows on his face. He just kind of starts laughing to himself.
Careful now. You're getting very close to provoking me.
Judith will reach for Cormac's hand and give it a squeeze.
He squeezes back, perhaps harder than he meant to, but thankfully your flesh is marble-like.
I hear your words, Gauntlet Lord Dodo Bird. You seem genuine in your concern. Your words strike true. And yet I wonder what it is you wish to see for England.
What I want, I'm afraid, can never be. But that doesn't mean we can't attempt.
Every man, woman, and child, clothed, shod, and fed.
I wouldn't even go so far as that. The word I was looking for was democracy. It is a rather dangerous word in a monarchic society such as ours, and such as England itself.
Some of what you say makes sense. Some of what you say is nonsense. I may deliver a message to some of my friends who I think might think of what you say. What would you have me deliver to them?
But there are those who walk the halls of power, who understand the plight of the younger man, the downtrodden and the oppressed. Those who walk the halls of power who would like to see a change.
If his friends are who I think they are, believe they already know that.
Then reassure them.
He smiles to you, Cormac.
And perhaps make it known that a certain member of the Gauntlet would like a parley.
That much is clear, crystal, in fact. But what not is clear to me is what will happen afterwards. My friends, they are quite shy, you see. They are not very popular among the Covenant Seven. And so, I am not much in love with the idea of bringing them those who I am not confident in. I shall carry your words. See me again in perhaps a fortnight. Or more.
Do tell them I have ways of proving my sincerity.
Unfortunately, won't you be out of the city in a fortnight?
Tom goes nowhere. Tom is always here.
Well, Judith was speaking to Cormac.
That's right. We have... Yes.
These things take time. Tom is here. You bring your message when you need to. I shall return the message when it is at hand.
That is settled then.
By then, perhaps, my friends will have a game for you to play. A game that if you win, perhaps you get to say. What do you
I
want?
always win. And he'll give him a very serious look. Even when I lose.
And he brings his face very close to you. We shall see. I will let you know when the game is known. And he backs away.
Cormac licks shut the hole in his lip, wiping away one more rivulet of blood. Very well then, until next we meet.
It is a very dramatic and exaggerated bow. Gauntlet Lord, Dodo Bird.
I don't know whether it is you seek to insult me, but I rather enjoy the little nickname you've given me.
And shall we call you the Magpie then?
I am Tom Lafoy. He smiles to you each in turn. He does a little bit of a roll through the middle of you and back into the crowd.
She'll turn and give him a little salute. Good evening, Captain.
And he rejoins some of the other neonates. And the two of you are left together alone.
I still find it difficult to understand how a creature like that can wander so freely amongst princes and seneschals.
He keeps a confidence. That in and of itself has value.
All this time he's had their ear. It has never been offered the embrace. Isn't that strange?
Perhaps he's refused.
I didn't even know that was an option. I certainly wasn't given a choice.
Nor I. But he can go places a Cainite cannot. And again, in that, there is value.
I must wonder if he's more subdued during the day, or if he always acts the clown.
Something tells me very little about him is an act. But the riddles are a ploy, meant to throw you off.
For a moment there it was working. It's hard to follow his words. Hard to know exactly what he wants to hear.
All the more reason for it. When you stop trying to tell him what he wants, what you think he wants to hear, you're more apt to tell him what you mean.
Which I did, to my regret.
Time will tell.
When?
Did you Did you wish to speak with anyone else? I did see Simone was here.
I've already said my apologies to Simone. I doubt that we'd have anything else to say to each other. I did offer her my assistance whensoever she should need it. What we did to her was terrible.
Then I shall provide a very real practice in that. I did, after all, have a direct hand in it. And she'll stroll her way over towards where Simone is lurking.
Cormac will take this opportunity to feed, since everybody seems to be doing it so openly.
No roll required. You find a couple kind of collapse together in a coil of flesh, and you already see a couple other bite marks. They don't seem any worse for wear from it, though.
He'll take a taste from each then, 1 blood point. He doesn't want to hurt them. Maybe finally put them to sleep so no one else bothers them.
Alright. They both moan in ecstasy in turn, and do seem a bit more loopy out of it than they were even before then. On the verge of sleep, you think. And within a minute or so, you feel this glaze come over you that you've seen in other people's eyes. You're much more relaxed than you were. You don't feel the fire of the beast as urgently as you did. It's still there, but somewhere in the background. Everything seems to slow down for you. You're peaceful. You're happy, even.
This pleases him, and with a bit of renewed confidence, because the nervousness is fleeing, he'll get up and join the party just to schmooze for a little while.
Your confidence in the change in mood is well received. It's a different thing to socialize now. It's child's play. It's very smooth for you to join these people in their laughter, and their writhing bodies seem natural to you, and socializing just becomes far more relaxed. Meanwhile, Judith moves over in the direction of Simone Deschamps, and you see that she's very vigilant. Her eyes dart from the nearest person to her, and when you become the nearest person, her eyes are fixed upon you with great suspicion. Kind of leaned up against the wall, her hands up to her face, almost defensively.
Judith will curtsy, but keep her distance so as not to encroach too far. Cormac made mention of a wrong he had done to you. I thought perhaps I might offer recompense on his behalf.
She looks you up and down briefly, almost scared, before she speaks up. Well, look at you, aren't you a tart?
Actually, I've been told I'm quite sweet.
I know what you want.
Nothing, actually. It's something I wished to offer. I keep an inn. I shall keep a room open for you.
She narrows her eyes at you. Roll your charisma empathy standard difficulty. Difficulty 7, actually.
Oof.
Oh no, that is a botch. A room open. Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure you would, wouldn't you, Judith? She looks you up and down again and starts walking in a very large circle around you to get away.
Even so, she'll give the name of the inn. You can find it near the Crofters' Quarter.
She looks over her shoulder a couple of times in fear and perhaps repugnance. And the two of you return to the party. Cormac, you remain in a nice dazed state. Bella Matea even joins you in your fraternizing with the neonates and the kind. It turns into this kind of moving mass of bodies, of sex and feeding. To which you're very comfortable with. Unless you want to try and fight it, in which case I'll have you roll your willpower.
I think Judith, too, will join in the mingling. The Bacchanalia, as it were.
Truly. What does Cormac do?
Cormac is too lost in his own little world right now to care what Judith's doing. He continues to socialize with anyone who will listen.
And when this inevitably turns into an orgy, Cormac goes with it?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Alright. And Judith as well?
Yeah, sure.
Whatever remains of the clothing in this room is removed as flesh, pale and soft and cold, is mixed with the warmth, and there is a kind of montage of sex and feeding in Bella Matea's salon in the latest hours of the evening. And the two of you find a break from your responsibilities, loosened up by the socialization and perhaps other intoxicating elements. Now we will fade the scene on that. In transition, in time, you return from the party back to the manor and sleep off your intoxication into the day. And several nights pass in anticipation of the move to Lincoln. Is there anything anyone tries to do in particular during the next few nights? We'll start with Elenid. You have a few nights before the move to Lincoln.
Let's see. Gather the supplies for her ghoul, and hopefully get her status as someone to be listened to solidified through Thomas with trying to ready the troops.
Yeah, Tom would definitely facilitate that in very forceful detail if necessary.
They listen to you, and so they agree to listen to her, although it's obvious that they're leery of listening to a woman on military matters. But the message spreads.
Oh, they will get used to it, and they will like it, much like the group she was with before.
Perhaps when they start winning battles.
Yeah, that's kind of what triggered it before.
Does Robert try to do anything in the next few nights? Your ghoul guy is now off on his journey to Canterbury to investigate the McNally brothers.
No, not really.
Okay. And Cormac, your ghoul Gautier is now at the manor and seems eager and excited for whatever comes next. Is there anything you do the next few nights?
Well, he's going to continue his ghoul's education, teaching him more about Canine society now that they have time to chat with impunity. And he does offer to take him along when they leave for Salisbury if he wishes to go, although he tells him that he doesn't know what might happen. It could be very dangerous.
You mean when you go to Lincoln?
Or Lincoln, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Salisbury.
And Judith.
Pondering. Definitely going to facilitate gathering up supplies fit for fortifying a upraised position for the troops. Probably set Brandon to that.
Alright, that's much more easy for him to accomplish than trying to recruit.
Right. And then would also float the notion to Elenid at some point in the future. Since Tom now has a castle that is in the process of being renovated, if she wouldn't mind plying her trade there to help improve the fortifications and make it as unassailable as possible.
Elenid has no problems using her knowledge to make things more defensible.
We should actually pass directly by it on the way to Lincoln. You'll be able to get at least some idea of what it is that I'm working.
It should prove as an interesting side project at the very least.
perhaps the stronghold of the Gauntlet.
Perhaps. We certainly know in these times one is definitely recommended, given how things are going.
All right. The group of you, after several nights of preparation, set off. Still at the close to the beginning of January. Your retinue of 45 men and at this point several carriages carrying supplies are packed and prepared, and at the head of it, Sergeant Brandon leading them, and the group of you ahead of him. And so you begin your path north. And it's not long before you do pass by, or at least within close proximity of the village of, I believe it's Edmonton, and the ruin of the castle, which shows the scaffolding and signs of productivity as you pass by it. So Ellen, you do get a look at this place, and you can roll your intelligence academics difficulty, let's say 7, to assess the structure and plans for fortifying it beyond maybe what is obvious to be done. Ah, 6 successes with your specialty, which would definitely apply here. You point out to... Go ahead.
I was going to say, Tom is taking furious notes.
You point out to Tom, and just to clarify, it is Tom that's writing now, I imagine.
Yep.
Okay. You point out to Tom the areas that don't look like they're being taken advantage of, improvements upon some of the ramparts, and some ideas you've seen from other castles that have successfully withstood siege, especially from places you've been at war at in the mainland, such as Calais, a place that is very difficult to take. And through your recommendations, Tom, you have a good number of changes that you might pass off to the foreman about how you might change the design going forward from maybe its original structure to one slightly better.
Tom will roll this up into a scroll and pass it off to a scout to have him ride down into Edmonton and deliver it to the foreman.
One of your men-at-arms makes this delivery quickly, and the message is delivered. Fortunately, with Elena's recommendation, it doesn't seem like it will take any more silver to make these adjustments either. And you continue on. The weather in England right now is not very forgiving for travel over the mainland. It's very rainy right now and very cold. You think by February you could expect much of the lands around Lincoln and north to be heavy in snow, if not as far south as London by then, depending on the year. You would not be surprised either way. You know that your men could very well be camping in snow by the time that they reach the area outside Lincoln. That will affect your men much more than you. But for now, you mostly face the storms and the rains, the muddy terrain which slows and sometimes stops your wagons, and they must be dislodged from the dirt roads. It's slow going. But after a fortnight, you do slog all the way up north, and you see over the hills the familiar sight of the city of Lincoln. You think by the next night you will be at the gates, if you wish to go straight to Lincoln. Do you have intention of going straight into the city on the next night?
The camp is already set up, correct?
Yes, by this point you have, and this is now around mid-January, that you have set up your camp just to the southeast of Lincoln on this hill which overlooks it.
I would say if we're within a day's, or, well, if we're close enough to be in Lincoln, then there's no reason not to,
Okay.
unless there are objections.
Ned's only objection would be to give the men staying behind their orders before setting out. With there being a contingency of if we don't return by a certain date or time.
And just to clarify, I assume Gertrude is staying behind. Is Kazim and Gautier staying behind as well?
Kazim would have stayed behind in London.
Okay. And
I'm not
Gautier?
exactly sure what Gautier would do. Cormac will leave it to him, actually.
He wants to follow you. He wants to go into Lincoln with you.
And then he'll let him. What better education than that?
Ned would prefer having Gertrude with her.
Into Lincoln?
Yes, she doesn't exactly like the idea of leaving her around a bunch of mercenaries, for lack of a better term. They've been down that road before.
Indeed you have. Alright, the four of you make your way somewhat early into the evening, descending this hill, the four of you plus your two ghouls, Gautier and Gertrude. You're let into the city just being travelers, and are stopped just inside the walls by an armed escort. You do not recognize the livery. Certainly not Triple Pegasus. But they do seem well armed. And you recognize a face that you met previously. You see Colton Sardini emerge through them. He looks at the group of you, the 6 of you. Welcome, my lords. I am pleased that you have arrived, though perhaps under less than ideal circumstances.
Quite so. We have come to treat with whomever it is currently speaks for Lincoln.
He smiles, looking to you. Do you speak for the entire group, then?
Tom will glance over to the rest of them in case there are objections.
Robert will step forward.
Cormac steps forward as well.
We all work together.
Yes, 'tis a mission of diplomacy and to, of course, have a look over the battlefield, if permitted.
Yes, we expected as much. Lady Everly has seen to the security of the city. She's been expecting you. Please, this way. And he gestures behind him as a few armed guards step out of the way.
Robert gives a slight nod at this and begins following.
Cormac follows as well. Still unsure about all this.
Tom's going to bring up the rear.
Ellen Ed will walk alongside Gertrude.
Cormac will address Sardinia as they walk along. Tell me, Master Sardinia, what news of Hugh de Balsham?
He is well. I imagine you'll speak with him this very evening. He's been quite eager to see you, I understand.
Cormac nods. Then all is well.
Gautier follows your lead, Cormac, kind of looking about himself with a bit of surprise and caution, assuming better to say anything. And Gertrude looks very concerned, her hands close together up to her chest and being ushered along. You have a significant armed escort around you as Sardini guides you into the tower that you've many times gone to meet Jean Marc at. Though in the past you've been escorted by Sir Reynaud, he is not here. Instead, Sardini escorts you and leads you up the familiar steps until you reach the top. You pass through a cloth screen into the chambers that, Robert, you are most familiar with. This area with the many hanging dark veils of cloth, the decorative bits of blue and purple dark velvet that hang and create this strange atmosphere. It's all translucent, so you can see figures beyond it, like ghosts. You enter, and instead of Jean Marc, you see a woman. She's pale, and perhaps in her early 30s, eyes of a brilliant amber, and white hair. Very unusual in appearance, very lithe, but not obviously unnatural. She turns to you wearing a conservative, dark gray, almost black gown. Good evening, my lords. I trust my dear Colton has been helpful in settling you in. He can sometimes be a bit blunt.
No, he has gotten us here of haste.
Colton bows his head and dismisses himself behind the rest of you.
A good evening.
I'm Eden Everly. I think perhaps we nearly met. It is a shame we could not have worked together sooner when the group of you previously came to Lincoln. Would that we could have met under more joyous circumstances, but such is the night.
Your reputation precedes you, my lady.
She smiles faintly.
Or is it your grace?
I imagine perhaps that is what you are here to decide. To nominate the next prince.
Then I suppose the question we must ask is, do you seek Praxis of Lincoln and to join the Covenant as one of its princes?
She looks to each of you in turn, her eyes resting on you, Cormac. Me? Well, I suppose I would be amenable to taking up this role. I would like to at least assure all of you and the Covenant Princes that the Knights of Lincoln here are calm and collected. There was some fear initially that this might give rise to those seeking to seek power, but I have maintained some peace here. Perhaps I would be fit for the role.
So far as I know it, the gauntlet is not given towards the role of Kingmaker. We are merely here to evaluate.
Of course. And she smiles plainly. I do hope that whomever you do nominate, your recommendation for Prince of Lincoln, they have the resources to fill the deep void which our late Jean Marc has left. And of course, if they are found wanting, then I would be happy to aid and support in any way I may. I doubt they would send you here if they did not expect a recommendation.
I know that they will be much more amenable if the individual seeking praxis is favorably disposed towards rejoining Lincoln with the rest of the Covenant.
But of course, I do lament the way in which our city was painted. May his soul rest in peace. I do not think that Jean Marc made a very wise decision in how he handled that conflict.
What has become of the ghoul Cornelius?
I'm afraid I have not seen him in many months. What else might I do to help alleviate any concerns you have of Lincoln's peace?
You've been decisive in maintaining order. I can applaud that. But I would like to know more details of what befell Jean Marc.
She nods, her hands clasped together in front of her.
Indeed. I believe Robert and Elenid should examine the site of the attack. For Cormac and I believe it would be prudent to meet with the assembled Primogen Council of Lincoln.
I expected as much. Indeed, the scene was difficult to protect, but I have many contacts in the local magistrate of Lincoln, as well as the county levies and city guard. The site has been as preserved as I may have kept it in the last fortnight. At your leisure, I will have you led to the scene. So far as we know, just over a fortnight ago, word was sent of the attack not many miles from the city, just at the edge of the forest to the east. It seemed a courier was passing by. They happened across the Lincolnshire wolds and found great disaster there. There were no survivors that they were able to find. I sent out my own resources, my own retainers, and neither did they find survivors. Then she looks down, morose. We sent word as soon as we were able.
What other remains were recovered?
The remains have not been touched. I'm afraid it was necessary to maintain the site. I suspected a full investigation, of course, and so they have not received burial. We believe to have identified Jean Marc himself as well as Sir Renaud.
To the city. Are you aware of any other claimants to Praxis besides yourself?
She looks kind of about herself as though others would be standing there, and her hands kind of come up. No other seems to have claimed. Perhaps out of fear.
Out of character, was there known to be Tremere in Lincoln?
Not that you know of.
I seem to recall, like, at least having rumors of one.
There were Tremere in York, and you went up there.
Oh, York, okay. Okay, never mind then. No, wait, no. York was the Tremere in York was the one. Robert, no. I'm thinking of a different one. Sorry.
The assistant to Barbaros?
No, not that one. The bookshop that was in Lincoln? Or was it in Lincoln?
That was in
That
York.
was in York.
Okay, never mind then.
However, that did remind me of a thing. Do you know why it was that Barbaros was in the city prior to the attack?
He was invited. He was escorted in by the triplicate Pegasus, Jean Marc's escort. I know not for what purpose he would not share.
And do you know how long he stayed?
Just a few nights, he departed upon the news of Jean Marc. I did not feel it was my place to detain a Covenant prince.
No,
Even-
of course not. How soon can a primogen be assembled?
I think perhaps in a night, 2 at the most. The elders will be assembled.
Then in the meantime, I expect we should look in on the site of the attack, and see what stone and bare ground can tell.
Surely your men need not camp out on the hill. You might invite them in. I'm sure they are all tired from travel.
We did not wish to cause undue tumult.
They did seem quite defensible up there. I can understand wishing to be cautious. And of course, you all may stay here at the tower, should you please.
Your warm welcome is appreciated.
I do my diligence for the safety of Lincoln and the peace of the realm. She bows her head.
Well, what say you? Do we call the men in, let them sleep in a warm barracks?
Robert will look to Elenid.
Keeping them closer at hand would be useful. However, are you certain this will not cause any, well, unease among the people here?
Larger retinues have passed through the city. I shall inform the city guard to look for them.
Very well.
It would take more than 45 men to take the city, after all. And she smirks playfully.
Yes, as I said, it was a small force. Nothing meant to raise alarm, cause suspicion that the Covenant might be sending a sieging force.
I shall
Well,
have
then.
Colton send for your things then. You will have quarters arranged, should you require them.
Very good. Let us make haste to the battlefield.
Right, the group of you departs.
Robert's going.
Indeed.
Elenid is going.
Yeah, I think Tom will go as well.
And the scene fades on the group of you departing from your meeting with Eden Everly. And on that, we will end the scene and end the session. And we will pick it up next week with the investigation of the assault. Cool. Good game. let us do some entertaining role players. We will start with Robert.
I'll give it to Elenid for having a more commanding presence with the troops. I quite enjoyed that.
Cool. Elenid.
Let's see. I'll give it to... You know what? I'm gonna give it to Cormac. Because he's been
Doing
more
opium and having
open with
orgies.
his opinions throughout the...
Cool. And
also the orgy.
also the opium and the orgies. Got it. Cormac.
Ooh. Gosh, it's a hard one. I think I'll give it to Judith this time. For keeping her cool when Cormac was losing it.
She was definitely trying to facilitate as much as she could without necessarily taking the.
Tom Lafroy was pushing buttons.
Certainly was, but you might have actually found a connection to the people you've been trying to find a connection to. Baby steps. Judith.
I'm also going to give it to Cormac. Might have felt like he said more than he ought to have, but he definitely made the connections that she was hoping he would make.
Awesome. I'm going to give one experience all around. Didn't get to quite as much as I thought we would, but the roleplay was good. And we'll get some more coming up. I'll also give some more time to prepare. So, that was good. We'll continue on next week. I think we can all make it next week, right? Anybody have any problems with that?
None that I can foresee.
I actually have a 4-day weekend next week.
Sweet mother of Jehovah.
No, I had time off I had to take, and then we're closed on New Year's Day, so.
Sweet.
You suck, sir.
Alright, sweet. Looking forward next week. Have a good night, guys. I'll talk to you throughout the week.
Word.
Good night.
Night.
Right.